Hello, everyone, and welcome to the plenary panel of the RISE Conference 2022. And it's indeed a privilege to be in the first session of the day, Leadership Paving the Way. I've always thought of leadership as a position that allows those to give us an inspiring vision, a drive towards right outcomes, and influence the way we think. Today, we have two fantastic leaders, people with great experience from the community to have a conversation with us and share their thoughts on what it has meant for them to pave the way. I'll start with a little bit of introduction. I'm Surekha. I'm the Chief of Staff and CAO for TIA India. I'm also honored to be the co-executive sponsor of Alliance, the BRG that we have focused on the Pride community. I would also like to pass on to our panelists and ask them to introduce themselves. If I could, please request Pips to introduce yourself and your role in Credit Suisse.
Thank you so very much. And can I say, first of all, thanks for that. And thank you for everyone joining us today. I'm really excited about the session, the whole conference, and I'm honored to be part of that. So thank you for making the space. Introductions briefly, my name is Mux Pips Bunce, pronouns she, her, and they. I'm working director here at Credit Suisse and head of our global markets technology strategic programs, but I'm also really proud to be our co-chair of our EMEA LGBT Plus and Ally program, where we've got over 7,000 active and engaged allies. I do a lot of work on the D&I space, particularly on LGBTQI inclusion, Ambassador for Stonewall, outstanding diversity role models. From a personal identity, so I'm non-binary and gender fluid, so both part of the trans spectrum of identities, so a very proud member of the LGBTQI and queer community. I've been married to my lovely wife for over 27 years. We've got two children that are 25 and 22 now. I do a lot of external work outside Credit Suisse as well. So whether that's speaking in Parliament, Government Equalities Office, and working with a lot of external firms to drive the needle on LGBTQI inclusion. And I think, most of all, it's such an honor to be here with the amazing people here on this panel and for all of you joining us today, because I think together we can achieve so much more. And thank you so much for all of us standing together in solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Pips. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mori-san, if you could give us an introduction of what you do in EY and why you're here today.
Thank you. And thank you first to have invited me to this conference. I feel really privileged and honored to be here and to share the space with both of you. I'm Moriaki Kida, the CEO and also chairperson for EY Japan. Previously, I was the deputy managing director for Japan as well. So I've been actually based here in Japan for about 6 years. I'm a gay man and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I have been quite active at EY with regards to LGBT inclusion over the past, I would say, 10 years or so. But maybe we will get into it later. I was not necessarily as active before that. And about 5 years now, I have been part of the EY Global D&I Steering Committee, as well as a relatively new organization within EY called Global Social Equity Task Force, which was really born out of the George Floyd incident in the United States. I'm currently the global sponsoring partner for Unity, which is our employee resource group for LGBT plus employees. And I'm actually professionally a CPA auditor, but have done many consulting engagements as well as M&A activities, supporting companies. And I have a musical degree in piano performance. Have a master's in business, and I'm married to a husband who is British. So we have an international family with one dog who is sitting right next to me.
Oh, lovely. It's certainly a privilege to be with you. And I would like to start by thanking our audience here for your attention for the next 40 minutes, where we are going to speak to Pips and Bunce on leadership and how we can pave the way for more inclusion. So maybe I'll go back to Pips, and I'm not necessarily going to go in the order always, but I will start with you, Pips. And if you could share with us your journey of self-realization and self-acceptance, where you are today. I mean, it's fantastic to see the position you're in, the leadership role that you play for Credit Suisse. But maybe if you could start with a little bit of your personal journey, that would be helpful for our audience.
Yeah, sure. Although I think I need to go and get my doggy into the room to follow your lead, Murray, because I feel we need more doggies. I guess in terms of my own self-realization, I think I definitely realized I was perhaps different to some of my friends and people around me from a very young age. It was probably 4 or 5 years old. I realized, I was happy in myself. I liked my toys. I liked what I had, but I needed more, so even from that incredibly young age, I'd be asking my mum and dad for clothes and dresses and tiaras and, different forms of expression to above what I had at the time. So obviously back then I didn't know about terms like transgender and non-binary and gender fluid and all of these things, but I guess I realized I was different from a very, very young age. I was fortunate in I always had a very open-minded and loving, excuse me, set of parents, mum and dad, brother, and, they gave me the freedom to be my true self. I think for me though, and again, same with my wife and same with our kiddies, they've, 20, 25 and 22 now, they've never known any different. They've always been so open-minded, so loving, so accepting, which I'm so proud of them for being that. I think for me, the biggest challenge on the self-realization was the corporate workspace, because being non-binary, being gender fluid, not knowing how I'm going to express until I wake up on a given day. And my expression from male to female does change typically daily. That was harder in the corporate workspace, particularly in the financial markets. So for me, and again, touch on this later on, but I found the whole self-realization great, but the biggest challenge was coming out in the corporate workspace. And, that was a hard challenge to get over, a hard hurdle. But I knew it was essential. I knew I couldn't hide my true authentic self in constantly. So probably about 8, 9 years ago was when I decided to finally come out in the corporate workspace as an identity, as non-binary, gender fluid, as an identity that I did not see around me. I'd look around and I'd see no one like me. So that was scary. But I think that was my self-realization journey. And, having amazing people, having allies around you, honestly, is life-changing. That's, to me, what gave me the confidence to finally step up and be authentic in all aspects of my life, including the corporate workspace.
Thanks for sharing that, Pips. I'm sure it wasn't easy, as I've heard other people from the community say. So thanks for sharing that. Morissad, if I could, pose that same question to you. You said that, you've been more active more recently, but on a personal side, how has your journey been from a corporate perspective or a personal perspective in terms of self-acceptance and self-realization?
Sure. I was probably quite similar to Pips in that, there are many people who realize maybe their sexual orientation or gender identity at a later stage in life. But I pretty much knew when my admiration for people I like, whether it be a girl or boy, when I was before I was teens, was developing stronger to feelings for boys. And so I knew something was different. I couldn't really express what that was to anybody because I felt like I would be treated differently. But also at the time, it's a very different world from today, where in the US in Los Angeles, where I was growing up, the AIDS epidemic was really starting or were probably at its worst. So gay men were dying of a disease that doctors weren't able to pinpoint what the cause was. And it was started to be whispered and spoken that it was amongst gay men that the HIV or this AIDS symptoms were being seen. And because there was no real understanding of the virus, people were shutting gay men from things and trying to, some people were trying to instill fear that if you use the same bathrooms, or towels with gay men, that maybe you will get sick. So it was quite a difficult time, maybe at the early set of period of the pandemic of COVID-19 was similar in that people weren't sure how it was passed on from people to people. But I was lucky enough to have met a school teacher who I was able to come out to and understand the word gay. And it was not myself only, but there were people around who also felt this way. And I was able to connect with a local not-for-profit who found a pen pal for me across very far away, who I was able to then start communicating. But I think, you know, it's really easy to brush the LGBT plus topics into something sexual or erotic, which is not necessarily the case. It's about our identity. And so there was a lot of mixed messages at the time on mixing these two things together about identity and also a part that is physical. So I think that was some challenge that I went through. And then similarly to Pips, I did go back into the closet when I started at EY, because I thought that might not be best for my career. But I did come out when I realized that leading teams would be very difficult without being authentic myself. So I'm quite sympathetic to people around the world who still live in certain parts of the certain countries where it may not be easy to find another person who is LGBT plus. And so I hope that these types of conferences really help those people. Thank you.
No, I think you know, the authentic conversation both of you had, and I was just listening so intently to how beautifully you shared your struggles, and I'm sure you've kind of made it look very normal, but it has been very hard. I think it gives people inspiration. As I said, leaders are to inspire. Certainly, you know, coming here and discussing that helps people to think of how they should think of their own journeys in time. So thank you for that, both of you. And you know, in that, I think it's a great segue for us to discuss how, you know, what are companies doing to foster inclusion. All three of us are from organizations that are very focused on inclusion, and yet we find very few people in leadership positions who definitely are from the community not really coming out. So is there, like you said, Mori-san, that you were concerned on whether it would get in the way of your career? Is it that there is a rainbow ceiling that's stopping them? Or what is it? What is keeping them from speaking up? Because I think when people see more leaders speaking up, I expect that will give a lot of people encouragement that their careers would not take any compromise just because of their identities or orientation. So, I'll let Mori, you go first this time with your thoughts.
Yes, thank you. So I don't know if there's a rainbow ceiling yet, as far as I see. Maybe in some other developed countries like the UK or the US, there might be something that's quite prevalent there. But I'd say that many people, you know, don't come out for several different reasons. One is, and especially at the workplace, one is because I think there are some orders to the way people come out, that some people feel more comfortable coming out at work first than coming out to their friends and families. But some people may feel that coming out to friends and family would be first, in case that things do get spoken outside of work, from leaking from work into the personal lives, especially people in certain prominent positions. You know, it may be difficult to come out unless all the family members knew. So that's one. I also feel when you're relatively younger in your career, it's unknown whether, like you say, if there's a rainbow ceiling or if your career opportunities may be different or disadvantaged because of your sexual orientation. I personally had that fear, but I also had the fear that if I came out at my workplace, that my client may not feel comfortable with it and therefore affect our company's business. So I felt responsibility over our relationship with, EY's relationship with our client. And so that negative repercussions that may be possible to your colleagues who might feel uncomfortable, the client, those were things that I was actually quite worried about. Maybe it's a bit Asian, but I felt quite worried about that. And then lastly, I think maybe, judgment and alienation, it may not be a direct discrimination to you and to your face, but colleagues not, feeling like they don't really want to associate with you or do not want to be thought of as your friend. I've experienced that before in my workplace, but when I was a student. And then I guess I would just add at the end that it's jurisdictional in a sense that local laws and regulations might prevent people from coming out, or certain customs and religion are things that are taboo to be spoken at work, but intertwines with LGBT plus topics. So it almost becomes a taboo to even come out as well. So those might be some reasons that I could give as difficulties in coming out at work.
Thanks, Maury. Quite some interesting perspectives you covered there. Pips, would you like to add your own thoughts here?
Absolutely. I guess I would echo everything that Murray said. I mean, that's absolutely spot on, and all of those things resonate. So I could listen to you for hours. So thank you. I guess a couple of things I would call out perhaps is allyship. That's such an important thing. Certainly for me and a lot of other people that I know have been down that coming out experience. Allyship is the biggest challenge. Until you know there is a strong, supportive environment of allies around you in that corporate workplace, people scared. They're worried about banter, people bullying them. They're worried about discrimination. Will it affect their career? Will people judge them? Will people understand them? And allyship and having a strong sense of allyship and belonging evaporates all of that, because when you're in a support ecosystem where people in the firm have got insight, they've learned through lived experience, they're there to support the LGBTQI community, that dissipates all of those worries, or a lot of those worries. And I certainly know the amount of love and compassion and empathy that I felt from allies when I finally stepped up the courage to come out. It was so emotional. So for me, that is such a key part of having allyship and sense of belonging. I think the message from the top of the house also is absolutely vital. I see a lot of firms where it's grassroots, there may be an ally program, but the message is not coming down from the exec board, that we as a firm really stand by this. This is really important. You should all get involved. You should all step up as allies. So I think messaging from the top of the house, particularly from the very senior levels, is really important. I think perception, the amount of Gen Z, millennials, younger people I speak to, their perception of financial services and big corporates are that they are typically not very inclusive. And it's quite bizarre, because I know, working with a lot of these big firms, we do so much to make the workplace inclusive. So getting the message out there that this is something we do stand by, and the culture is inclusive, and we celebrate diversity. We don't tolerate it, because there's a big difference between those two things. I think that's important, because, Gen Z, millennials, people coming into our workplace now, they deserve a workplace where they're not going to feel they have to go back into the closet. So I think it's really incumbent on the workplaces to make sure they offer those fresh, talent pipeline coming into the firm, a workplace where they will be fully supported, they will be celebrated, they can be authentic. Because I always would say that to my younger self: be proud of who you are, be proud of what you are, be a very visible, vocal, proud member of the queer community, because, you are amazing. So yeah, I think there's a lot firms can do, but there's a lot of different tangents as to why I think you see levels of representation getting lower and lower as you rise up the ranks.
Yeah, I think I would, echo what both of you have said. And having been an ally for many years, I do think it's also important for us to ask the question, why aren't allies out there in senior positions speaking up? And I think, as you said, the messaging at the top of the house makes all the difference. And I think one of the things I've spoken about earlier in terms of inclusion and why we do this, it's really very tied to the hip about what we want to do about our society, serving our clients. And I think Mori-san spoke to our clients. And the society, our offices and our corporate culture needs to be reflective of the society, and we can't change that. So I do think the more we understand how it has a business implication beyond everything else, will also help drive a real conversation on inclusion, because you want it to reflect what your client base is. So with that, I think having spoken about allyship, I think great segue for me to ask Mori-san, what you would advise anybody in our audience who wants to be an ally. What would help the community in terms of allies? What do you expect of them? Mori-san, I think you're on mute.
Thank you for the question. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Pips mentioned about the importance of allyship, and also, the not just the tone at the top, but the actual detailed actions at the top. Because I still remember I cried when about 20 years ago, a leader in my organization didn't just say D&I is important, but mentioned that women, gay men, lesbian, bi and trans people are important. And I think those words actually, for the first time I heard from leadership, was really meaningful. It wasn't just bunched up in D&I. And so acknowledging these things are quite important. In that sense, I also feel that allies need to come out sometimes, depending on the country, the circumstances. And it takes courage to be an ally, especially for supporting stigmatized groups of people. It may not only be LGBT plus, but others. And so I think companies could really help in educating how to be an ally, and what it means to be an ally, and what strengths allies bring. Because I think when people realize as allies how they can actually positively impact the organization, I think it's not a difficult decision to make in that moment. But the environment, for example, being a visible and vocal ally in certain ASEAN countries or Middle East, Africa, are quite difficult. So what are ways that you can still be an ally without being persecuted in those local markets is quite important. And giving examples of how other companies have been able to make small steps in those countries, and giving comfort to allies to be able to take that small but significant step forward is really important. In that, I really encourage companies to actually start comparing notes in those difficult places, and share best practices and safe practices to be able to take that step. And then also engage with not-for-profit organizations or non-governmental organizations to team and to make those small but very significant steps each year. For example, at EY, it's spoken quite easily to put a corporate logo with rainbow around it every year, either on the International Day of Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. But it's not that easily said than done for some parts of the world. So making small steps like that to encourage this discourse amongst people, and also engaging with local groups are things that I could recommend.
Thank you so much, Mori. Anything to add to that, Pips, in the same theme?
I think I would say, all of that above for sure, absolutely. I think also, most senior leaders particularly want to do the right thing. They absolutely know they want to step up as an ally, they want to help the community, the network, but a lot of them I speak to don't always know what to do. So I think the more support we can give them as to, you as a senior leader, you as an exec board member, you as whatever, here's some things and actions that you can do that will make a massive difference. And, that can range from making sure they're wearing their LGBT lanyards, making sure they're updating their email signatures, using their pronouns, using stickers, as right the way through to the communications they send out, making sure they're making space in their big presentations to talk about the topic, turning up and stepping up. I think a lot of people just want to do the right thing, but need to be given very bite-sized things. And I always say an ally at whatever level they are superpowered allies, they are super allies, because to me, allies really do transform the culture of an organization. You can't change an organization's culture by writing a policy in black and white. It's how do people act? What do they say? Do they use inclusive language? Do they care about these topics? Are they empathetic? Do they amplify humility? That's what a culture of a firm is about, and it's allies that exemplify that. So I would say all of those things. There's a lot of different steps. Senior leaders quite often just need to be given the support as to what best they can do, and working with the networks to understand those and giving them the support to do that moves them from being an ally into being an advocate, someone that's encouraging other people to step up for the network. And that is so powerful.
Thank you for sharing that. I think if there's one little thought that I have in this space, which is that I think it's been tremendously powerful where organizations have had reverse mentoring from the community for leaders, because it allows you to create that relationship, the bond with the community, and really get close to understanding how exactly we can help. And I've had fantastic experiences having mentees who, in fact, I keep saying, I learned so much from you and helped me become a better ally, because maybe, as you said, I don't think I knew what I was expected to do. And here in, okay, these are the 5 steps. Let's start with the baby steps. And I saw that they made an impact because, as I said, we're very new in the journey here in India, in TIA. And last year, when we set off, when I first started putting my pronouns in the signatures, it confused a lot of people, and they weren't very sure, why I was doing that. But it stoked a conversation, because some of them did come up and say, hey, listen, what's this thing you write in your pronouns? Incidentally, I've also seen our US colleagues do it. But they didn't have, they weren't sure they could ask their US colleagues. But the minute I wrote it became very easy to come and have that conversation. Well, that's a great start. And, if that's the case, I'm going to use it too. So I do think what you're saying about helping allies become allies in terms of how do you become more visible is extremely helpful. And I know that, Ram, when he was in the corporate world, was also in the role of reverse mentoring. That's the first time I heard of it. I thought it was a fantastic idea to help allies in senior positions understand and know how to do their jobs well. So with that, I think just wanted to again check, you were both in very senior leadership positions, you're out proud members of the community. Is there something that differentiates you from your peers when it comes to expectations of the organization, and most often about the softer aspects of inclusion? And how do you think your being in the position that you are contributes to the D&I journey for your own companies in the first place and society in general? So Mori-san, maybe I'll start with you.
Thank you. So it's quite interesting to me that, our global chairman, Carmine DeCivio, he really pushed for D&I at EY, created these committees and started talking about D&I as even KPIs. It really actually changed the culture of the organization, like Pips mentioned. And so I think leaders being such visible, vocal advocates of DE&I is really important. And what's also really interesting to me is that we already had this DE&I culture, but when I became the leader of Japan, and we have about 10,000 people here, talking about DE&I and pushing forward with DE&I was something I really put it out in my first speech. And it became actually fashionable to talk about DE&I in every aspect of the work, even in serving our clients. How do we use DE&I as our advantage? And so it's one thing to have these hard KPIs for inclusion or promotion, but there is something that actually transformed when you see an ally or a leader that is from an affinity group actually speaking very loudly about the importance of it. So I think that was my biggest surprise, that just a gay man being a leader wouldn't necessarily change something that's already good. but it actually does change. So visible representation at the leadership level actually means a lot to organizations.
That's so empowering, isn't it? Fantastic. That's really nice to hear from you. Pips, what's your experience been?
I think definitely all of that. I think for us, it's been a journey as much as for the people coming out themselves as it is for the company, because every different identity that comes out, it allows that firm to sort of progress on their journey. I certainly know when I come out non-binary, gender fluid, there was no one else like that prior to me that had done so. It's working with the firm to enhance their policies, getting them to understand the stuff and the nuances and the challenges. I think, we touched on it before, making sure the support for the different identities is there from the very top of the house. That's really important. And reverse mentoring is such a brilliant example. Like you said, we've got a lot of our exec boards that have assigned LGBTQI mentors. I know I mentor our MIA CEO, and like you said, it's such a powerful two-way conversation. It gets them to understand the lived experiences, and it gets them to step up more so for the network. I think the visible support, logos, lanyards, all that stuff, that is really, really important. Firms should not overlook that. But also driving home that this is not a nice to have. This is not something that should just be done at the end of the day. This is a critical part of the business. Our clients are diverse. We should be supporting our firm. It's, it should be baked into everything that we do when we're picking vendors or procurement or whatever, right the way through to support networks, community outreach, charities we work with. It needs to be baked into everything. And I think, having firms really promoting visible role models, people of different identities across the firm, that's powerful because it sends a strong message that A, those individuals are accepted and included and thriving, and B, it's something that we stand by. So I think all of those. And finally, I think, it's important that the firms that do step up, they have an obligation to use their platform to affect social change. So getting involved in various different things to promote not just LGBT inclusion in the workspace, but across society as a whole. I think big firms have such an obligation that they should be stepping up in that way, because we, as a collective, have so much power to affect change. And I see that happening time and time again. So I think for me, the firms that really do step up, that are not just pink washing, that are not just coming out during June and then you don't hear from them for the rest of the year, they're the ones that are really making a difference. And I applaud and commend them all. And I think, like you said, Marie, we should definitely all be working more together collaboratively, because then we can achieve even more.
Thank you so much. I think one thing I picked when Mori-san spoke about KPIs and measurements, and to your point, Vips, that it should be integrated into business. DIA is very focused on supplier diversity as well. So not only do we look at what we do, but the communities that we work with the partnerships that we have with vendor partners. And it's been such a fulfilling experience for me having experienced that, and the ability to say, hey, listen, even from our business partnerships, we would like to be inclusive and look at vendor partnership very closely. So yes, there are huge opportunities to kind of make an influence as an organization. I think just one thing I did want to call out before I move to the next question, everything that Pips and Mori-san are sharing is to create that culture of inclusion, to make sure that people feel safe to be themselves at work. But the one thing, given that we are talking to an Indian audience, predominantly Indian audience at least, I would like to call out that there are cultural nuances that we have to be respectful of. And the idea of having these communities or creating that atmosphere is not to have more people come out, let them make their choices, let them decide when they are comfortable doing it and safe doing it. It's to make sure that at any point in time, they're safe to do that if they make a choice. So I know at times we get asked the question, oh, we've got this BRG, but we don't have people who are out, so we don't know who we are serving. Well, they are there, and let's be respectful of their need to come out when they have to. That is not the objective of any of these conversations. So I just wanted to call that out before we move to the next question. So I think another, we've of course seen change happening, and corporates trying to move towards more equity, role equity in that sense. But is there anything that comes to your mind in terms of how we can make this move faster? Because sometimes I get asked, so are you optimistic about the future? And I say, I just hope that it's far more accelerated than how long it has taken us to get here. So how can we make this engine run faster and, kind of onward and upward from here? Pips, I'll start with you this time.
That's a really good question, and I couldn't agree more. The rate of change really does need to, we need to notch that dial up, because yes, we're making good progress and good work has been done, but there's so much further to go. Even taking the UK, for example, the levels of LGBTQI hate crime has, absolutely gone through the roof over the past couple of years, more so than any other demographic of diversity. And it's very easy to see very hard-won progress very quickly slipping backwards. So I think we need to speed the rate of change up. I think, the level of investment and focus that firms put on this, that's absolutely fundamental. Again, back to my earlier point, this shouldn't be a nice to have. It should be something that is a priority for the business, for the network groups, and for the exec board of that firm. They need to be putting the focus, the time in to make these changes, and holding people accountable for making these changes. It's no use saying we aspire to do this. People need to be held accountable to make the things happen. I've seen a lot of firms make the mistake of only focusing on one or two specific dimensions of diversity and then LGBTQI being left as a side runner. That does not work. We need to have a holistic strategy that covers all forms of diversity, intersectional as well, and an execution of that strategy. But it needs to cover and definitely include LGBTQI, because that's a common mistake that some firms make. And I think getting allies to step up and be the change they want to see, that's the fastest way to make this stuff happen. The more people we can get in any firm having that eureka moment and saying, oh my goodness, I never realized it was like that to be X, Y, and Z, the lived experience. I didn't know the actions of me could help other people so very much. That humility is such an important thing. And if you get that growing within a firm, that is going to foster that sense of people wanting to become more active and engaged allies, which will then obviously accelerate the progress of change. So yeah, I think doing the right thing is not always the easy thing, and doing the easy thing is not always the right thing. So sometimes you just have to go the extra mile to do the thing that's right, that might not be the easiest.
Yeah, I think one, again, a little bit for me on this is that everything that we see in our corporate, right, it's a structured environment where we have all these facilities, these conversations. I think for all of us who are in the corporate, to take it back to society, because that's where there is no, network, or there isn't in the various groups that we talk about, to kind of take it to our families, take it to society, and make sure that we are doing that bit as well. Because I think it's one thing to learn something in your office and go off and go home and switch off. I think that needs to change as well. So anybody who's listening to us today, I think it's important to have those conversations across society outside of the office as well. So just wanted to appeal to every one of you to kind of stoke conversations if we have to make these changes much faster. With that, Mori, I also do want to ask your views in terms of how we can accelerate the change from your perspective. What have you seen helping to accelerate it?
Yes, I really liked what Pip said earlier about the obligation large companies have. And, we're, as corporates, we're all almost controlled by the society wherever we operate in. So, maybe some places where legally it's already equal marriage is established, or anti-discrimination laws are already there. That might be different, but we've learned a lot from the gender equity discussions in the past decades, which obviously is not enough done. But one of the things is that if women are expected by society to take care of certain responsibilities in a more so than men as society, it's really hard to change that from just companies within. So it really, I think first step is really trying to understand what is the differential, what's the temperature difference from within the company versus what's right outside, so that our employees are safe in the company, but when they go back home or when they're in their communities, we can continue to support and extend our safety net to those outside. But that identifies the differential, and then to try to work with external communities, and that obligation that Pips was talking about, to start changing the society, because companies are really a microcosm of the society in where we operate. I also think that these company employee resources groups that I know Pips has been really very active too, these are really important because it helps not only support LGBT plus people, but it also educates allies to become allies. Also, they become a catalyst in developing human resources policies that have anti-discrimination policies, but also employee benefits that may not be realized as needs, but are realized. For example, gender neutral, clothing attire rules that some companies or some countries might have, or gender neutral toilets. Those are things that usually have come out from active employee resources groups. And then lastly, for larger companies, especially companies like Credit Suisse or EY, we also have to develop international rules of engagement, in that when people move from, let's say, the UK to Japan, or from Japan to India, the society doesn't always provide the same types of benefits, protection, so that we also protect these employees, and therefore actually changing the society as well. So apart from what Pip said, those are the things that I kind of see as what we can do to accelerate change.
Thanks for embellishing that, especially the society context, because I always tell people, you can do something within the office, but when the person walks the door, they need to feel the same way when they're leaving. So thank you so much for your thoughts. I know we're having a fantastic conversation. It's a shame that I'm going to have to draw it to a close, but before I do that, I really want to thank both of you for being so honest, for being so easy to speak to, and it's almost feels like we're all sitting in a room and talking. I hope to meet you someday in person, and virtual hugs to both of you. Thank you for being our guest today. But before I close, just any parting remarks to our audience here. Pips, I'll start with you now. If you wanted to share your thoughts.
Thank you. I guess first of all, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to be with you all today. That was really, really a nice session. I think I would say to people, please take something from the conference today, the session you've just had, and take it away. Talk to your families, your networks, your friends, your colleagues, and make a pledge to make a difference with that, because that butterfly effect will go outwards. Make a space for these types of discussions, because as we said, these discussions grow and it's transformative. It gets people involved in the understanding, and I guess those discussions. As I always said to my younger self, be proud of who you are, be proud of what you are. You're amazing. Never try and hide your true shining light, because we all deserve to be our true authentic self. Don't ever lose that. And if you are an ally, if you're stepping up as an ally, don't lose sight of the impact you're having. I can guarantee in some way, shape or form, you are making society a better place. You're making your corporate workspace a better place. And sometimes you may not even know it. You could be helping save lives. When I see the impact this stuff has on people, I've lost friends to suicide, etc. It's shocking. And honestly, the role of an ally and the difference that they make, chances are you won't know how massive that is, but it is absolutely huge. So be proud of being part of that change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pips. Thoughts from you, Mori-san?
Yes, I want to refer to one word that Pips has brought up that's really important, which is intersectionality. And I want to ask people to think about their own intersectionality, because there's no such person in this world who is of only one affinity. So you could be a man, but you could be LGBT plus, or you could be a woman and be disabled or have different abilities. So we are all people who have majority side and a minority side, or intersection of different affinities. So I think one tip, if you can take out of this conference, or for me, is to think of your personal story of what diversity is or this intersection is for yourself. Because, as you become leaders in organizations or in your communities, it's not that difficult to talk logically about why DE&I is important, whether it's increasing, engagement of our people or reducing crime or things like that. That might be quite easy to explain why I'm for DE&I. But it's not easy to talk about your own personal reason of why DE&I means that much to you. And to be a really great ally, I've seen many allies be able to talk about those vulnerable and maybe invisible qualities of intersection of those qualities that you have. And so if you can think about that and start sharing that with others and be an ally at the same time, I think it will be so powerful. So thank you very much.
What a wonderful note to end on, Maury. Really, thank you for saying that. And I do think personally, when I was writing the book, writing the section of the book for Equally, the editor kept probing me, why are you an ally? And I couldn't explain. It took me a long time to come out and say why I had chosen to be an ally. And certainly there was an intersectionality added. I'm not going to go through that right now, but it's been fantastic speaking to both of you. I think one appeal I would like to make to our audience is, as you go out of your conference, as Pip said, think of the things that you can do to influence, make changes. Small or big does not matter. Every little counts. And more importantly, I think the pandemic has been hard on humanity in general, but to the community in particular. I know a lot of people in the community who've reached out because they know of us as allies, and just be there for people. That will make a huge difference. They're all kind of trying to deal with their struggles. And collectively we can make this a much beautiful place, a very wonderful world at that. So wishing everyone the very best for the rest of the day and conferences. Keep your thoughts coming and be well. Thank you so much.